So when Pam found out I was going to be teaching, she asked, well, what are you going to teach on? And I said, patience. And she kind of gave me a look like, why did you choose that topic? Like, almost implying, what do you know about patience? Unfortunately, she can't be here this morning. She's with her parents. But this morning before I left the house, she said, she grinned and she said, "I'm going to miss your lesson today because I had some things in my mind that I was going to maybe bring up." So we've been spared, and I've been quoted as saying, for those of you that know Pam very well at all, she's a little bit like living with Lucy, if you remember Lucy and Desi, but I love her. So, start with a little story. Statue of a dog. What's this got to do with patience? Well, this dog's name was Hachiko. And Hachiko had a master who was a professor at Tokyo Imperial University back in the 20s. You may be familiar with this story. It is a true story. Hachiko would meet his master at the Shibuya train station, a suburb of Tokyo, virtually every day when he came in from the train. Unfortunately, the professor suffered a stroke while he was in the city, and he never returned. Hachiko, for the better part of 10 years, for virtually every day, would go to the train station and wait for his master. And they erected this statue of him in memory of his loyalty and his patience. I can't imagine any of us having this kind of patience, but it is an amazing, amazing story. What comes to your mind when you think of the word patient or patience? Yes, Jenna. Waiting. Yeah, waiting. I was just talking with Brother Roger a few minutes ago, and he was talking about he was in the hospital for a few days, and if you've been around hospitals, you know that unless it's an emergency, they take their time about things usually, and we have to be patient, and we have to wait. What else? Yes, sir, James. Having understanding. That helps in being patient, doesn't it? Okay? Certainly does. Enduring. Okay? Yeah. Sometimes we just have to endure something. We have to be patient. We have to endure. Anything else come to mind? Okay. Well, those are good thoughts. One definition of patience, the ability to calmly wait for something without becoming annoyed or upset, remain steadfast despite difficulty, perseverance, somebody said that, involves staying calm when waiting for an outcome, dealing with frustration, or enduring hardship. Does that sound like a reasonable explanation of patience? I think it probably is. Well, let's center our thoughts this morning, like I said, on two aspects of patience. One is, what's the Bible have to say about patience? And the other aspect being, okay, how do we apply the concepts in my life? And admittedly, there are times that I need to apply the concept of patience in my life. Boy, everybody's quiet this morning. You got too much sleep, didn't you? Yeah. Okay. If you didn't hear all of that, I'll try to summarize it quickly that, God has his timeline, and we have to accept that. And that could be very difficult, can it? If we pray fervently for the health of a loved one or the spiritual welfare of a family member or whatever, and it just appears nothing is happening. It's hard to be patient. It's hard to wait. Yes, ma'am, Barbara. Yeah, God is patient because he doesn't want anyone to be lost. God could have, well, we know that there were times when God was ready to just, I'm done with everybody, we'll just kind of start over. But he didn't, and he hasn't to this day. And he doesn't want anyone to be lost. Depending on your version of the Bible that you read from, there are different translations or different renderings. The concept of patience does involve waiting, as Jenna said. For example, waiting for an Uber ride, or just waiting to check out at the store, or waiting at a stoplight. The English Standard Version tends to render it patience, the word patience. But what I found kind of interesting was that, according to Strong's, patience is used about 49 times in the Bible, roughly 50 times. But only 3 times is that word really used in the Old Testament. It tends to be more of a New Testament word. The NIV renders it as forbearance, and it's used about 30 times, 9 times in the New Testament, but mostly in the Old Testament. And then King James Version, New King James, American Standard, talk about long-suffering. Not as many times used in the Bible, less than 20, we'll say. And most of those times are actually in the New Testament. So there seems to be this difference in how the concept is presented between Old Testament and New Testament. We'll talk about that here in a second. What do you think of? What do you think of when you hear the word long-suffering? Not very. Marriage? Pam, if you're watching, I didn't say that.
He's not here, so I had to say it.
I didn't even ask him to say that. And you can apologize to Mandy afterward. But long-suffering. Sometimes we do have to just suffer through some things, don't we? That's hard. Anybody here? Yes, ma'am. Raising children. Yeah, that's a challenge, isn't it? And unfortunately, when you become a professional, your children are all raised, right? You're an amateur up to that point, and all of that wisdom, yeah, exactly. But it's, yeah, raising children, difficult. Other thoughts about the word long suffering? Okay. Chronic. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Health issues certainly, I mean, literally suffering, right? Um, and so health issues can be an example of long suffering, chronic issues. Gary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Gary's sharing. Gary, I've thought the same thing many times. That my relationship with my children and the corollary to my relationship to my heavenly Father, and how many times I disappoint Him, how many times maybe my children have disappointed me, but I continue to forgive them. How many times I disappoint God, He continues to forgive me. He's very patient. More patient than He should be in reality, but very patient. Good point. All right, well, let's go ahead and look at some Old Testament references. And Jen and I didn't talk about this before class, but her point about waiting. The Old Testament often refers to waiting on the Lord. Psalm 27:14, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, wait on the Lord. I think we have a song, don't we? Wait, wait, wait on the Lord. Psalm 62:5, truly my soul silently waits for God. From Him comes my salvation. And this is certainly just touching the hem of the garment on the number of passages in the Old Testament about waiting on the Lord. One that should be, I think, is very familiar, Isaiah 40:31. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And I'm interested in what your thoughts are on this. Why is the concept of waiting on the Lord predominantly? It seems to be predominantly in the Old Testament. They're waiting for the fulfillment. Okay. There were long periods of time, weren't there? Yeah, long periods of time. You know, we read text and it'll say, and after 40 years. And you go, oh, okay, 40 years. Think about that a second. 40 years. We got a lot of people in this room. Probably not 40 years old, right? Long periods of time. 400 years between the Testaments. 400 years. Our country's not 400 years old. So, yeah, waiting. I think that that's certainly part of it. That they're waiting on the Messiah. Or in some cases, David was waiting on things. So let's explore that just a little bit, and let's think of some examples in the Old Testament of those that waited on the Lord. Abraham. Already mentioned Abraham, but maybe in a different light here. How old was Abraham when he finally had a child, a son? 100? And again, we kind of read, oh, he's 100. You go, that's a long time. He lived a long time, but that's a long time. Abraham would be an example. What about Joseph? What did Joseph have to wait for? Yeah, he really had to wait for redemption. Think of all the trials he went through. And in a sense, vindication. Sold at 17, became an Egyptian leader at 30. 13 years. And again, we say, 13 years, that's not all that long. The judge said, you'll spend the next 13 years in jail. Does that seem like a long time? Yeah, that seemed like a long time. But he had to wait. Hannah. What was Hannah's situation? Barren, wanted a child. Distressed about not having a child. And what did she promise about the child? If she could have a child, she would give him to the Lord, wouldn't she? Okay. So Samuel, but she had to wait. David, his kingship. Did he have the opportunity to seize his kingship prematurely? Yeah, he did. I mean, he physically could have killed Saul. He was physically that close. But he waited. And what did he say? What did he continue to say about, why haven't you killed Saul? Why haven't you? What about Saul? What did he say about Saul? He was God's appointed. He was God's chosen. I'm not going to usurp God's authority on this. When the time is right, then I will become the king. Here's a good one. I think Job was patient. Don't we even have that little saying in our vocabulary, the patience of Job, right? And yes, he had restoration of the things he had lost. That didn't happen in the snap of a finger. He was tested. And patience will test us, won't it? It will test us. Any other examples somebody wants to mention about? Yes. Good point. Yeah. Yeah, 25 years with Abraham from the time of the promise until it actually came to fruition. Right? 25 years. What's that? Christ has to be on the list, sure. What did he wait for? And he had to wait until the time was right. He was going to be crucified, didn't he? That was not the time necessarily of his choosing. It was his Father's time. And you think he was patient with his disciples? We know there were times when that was a problem. Yes, so we had a comment over here, and I'll come to you. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Ah, yes. He paid a price for his impatience, didn't he? Saul being impatient, not waiting for Samuel. Zach? Yeah. 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 Was it 120 years he took to build the ark? Yes, ma'am. Jenna? Yeah. Paul wanted his affliction removed. 3 times he prayed. And God said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. Will? Good comments. Thank you. All right, well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about New Testament references. And it tends to talk more about perseverance and patience. For example, 2 Peter 1, 5 through 6, and beside this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, your virtue knowledge, to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience. That's King James Version. So a thought occurred to me that patience is not really presented as optional in the Bible, in the New Testament. So if we look at 1 Thessalonians 1, 2 through 4, we give thanks to God always for you all, Paul talking to the church at Thessalonica, making mention of you in our prayers, remembering without ceasing your work of faith, labor and love, and patience of hope in our Lord. Will, to your point about patience of hope in your life, in our Lord Jesus Christ, in the sign of our God and Father, knowing, beloved brethren, your election by God. Hebrews 12:1, very familiar passage, I think, to everyone. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which easily besets us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. Is the life of a Christian, it requires patience, doesn't it? Persecution will test our patience. And we just heard a lesson on that, a week ago, roughly. about persecution, and it's not necessarily anymore, although I guess there's something going on in, Nigeria, with some Christians being persecuted physically. But in our country, it's not so much a physical persecution as it is mental, psychological, social. What other ways does the Christian life require patience? Mike?
Patience. Probably self, because there are so many yet that aren't ready for the way the world is going.
Yeah. Praying for waiting for the Lord to come in a world that's in a mess. Yeah. What other ways? You ever have maybe a family member that's gone astray, as we say? Is that a Church of Christ term, gone astray? Patience and praying for them to do what's right and to return. Otherwise, fellow Christians.
Any transgression, you are spiritually restored. Bear one another's burdens.
Yep. Bearing one another's burdens, trying to bring an erring one back, a fellow Christian. That can be mentally exhausting, can it? Okay. Okay. Right. Praying for our leaders, waiting for them to hopefully do God's will, do what's right for the people. What about patience with our church leaders? You ever look at hear of a decision that maybe the eldership at a church makes, and you go, really? Somebody said it earlier. I don't remember who it was. Oh, it was James, about understanding, having understanding. Anybody here ever been a manager of a group of people? Several, right? Any of your people ever look at you like you're crazy when you say we're going to start doing X, Y, and Z? Yeah. But a lot of times there are things you can't tell them, but you know, that drive those decisions. And when you're the one going, really? Maybe we have to be patient. Think, okay, he or she knows something I don't know, and that's probably what's driving this. So, yeah, it's but being a Christian requires a lot of patience. Any other thoughts on as a Christian, James? Right. Yeah. And it's hopefully it's a lot easier for us to at least go, okay, God, you're not answering the prayer the way I want it or whatever, but I do trust you. Now, our fellow man sometimes, not everybody is trustworthy, but unfortunately, but Will?
Where they cannot talk about certain things because of it is confidential or whatever.
Right.
We then resent them because, wait a minute, you're my friend, you should be able to tell me everything that you know, and that's not the way it works.
No, no.
And as someone who's grown up in the church, and now I'm not, I'm having to see that myself as well, is that there are things we're just not going to be privy to.
Right.
And there's going to be information that we are not able to have to help us understand why the decision was made.
So it comes back to the element of, as James was saying, of trust, doesn't it? All right. Let's, we're running out of time. Let's move on. But I appreciate the comments. James 5, 7, and 8. Therefore, be patient. It doesn't say, you ought to be patient. Try to be patient. It says, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. Mike? See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and later rain? You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. 2 Peter, again, about adding to knowledge, temperance, patience. Let's talk about some applications. And why in the world do I have a picture of a dog looking out a window? Why do you think I have a picture of a dog looking out a window? Yeah. For any dog owners, it's very common. Patiently waiting for the master to return. I like this. I saw this recently. I try to be a good person, but then someone pulls out in front of me doing 10 below the speed limit, and I got to try again tomorrow. Anybody challenged with maybe the driving habits with others? My driving habits are perfect, right? I do try to remember when I get frustrated with others, I've probably done that same stunt. You know, oh, I pulled out in front of you. I didn't see you. Well, they probably didn't see me either, right? So why am I impatient? I just jotted down a few things I could think of. Instant gratification anymore is, man, that's, got to have it now. Amazon, you said you were going to be here at noon. It's 12:15, you're not here. What's going on? Lack of appreciation of our understanding of what others are experiencing. No matter how bad our day is, there is somebody having a worse day somewhere, isn't there? Sometimes we're pressed for time, so we're just impatient. We just go, go, go. Sometimes we may be doing a job with somebody and they're being kind of slow, and you think, just let me do it. I can do a better job, or I can do it faster. Right? Just let me do it. It's one of the big fallacies in training. When you're training somebody, show and let them do, and it can get very frustrating. And the worst thing you can do is jump in and do it yourself, because they're not going to learn that way, are you? Sometimes it's lack of rest. Are you ever impatient if you're just tired? That's probably one of my things. And unmet expectations. It's not happening the way I thought it should happen. It's not happening the way I want it to happen. It needs to happen sooner. It's just not living up to what I want. Anything anybody wants to add to Maggie? Mm-hmm.
As Christians.
Okay.
They work.
That's a great point. That being patient doesn't mean we should not have a sense of urgency on certain things, right? Because we should have a sense of urgency on a lot of things. Can you imagine if a patient shows up at the ER where Tim works and says, I'm having severe chest pains and feel like an elephant's on my chest and my left arm is hurting, my jaw, and got all the classic signs of a heart attack. And they say, I've got a patient over here. I've got to put a couple of stitches in. I'll be with you in a minute. Just hang on. No, there needs to be a sense of urgency there, doesn't there? So, what can I do to improve my patience? Well, certainly pray. We've all heard the Lord, give me patience and give it to me now kind of scenario. We're not talking about that, right? Try to understand the issues that others are going through. Broaden our perspective. Sometimes you may be dealing with someone or working with something and you go, oh, this is terrible. I'm becoming so impatient. And then you need to stop and think, hold it. This is not nuclear science. This is not brain surgery. The sun will come up tomorrow, God willing. It's going to be okay. Just take a deep breath. Sometimes we just need to slow down. There is a time to speed up and be urgent, and there's a time to slow down. And set realistic expectations. If we have unrealistic expectations, is it easy to become impatient with certain things? I was thinking this morning, we went down to Lindsay's graduation from boot camp, and I've never been around the military a lot, so it was an opportunity to kind of experience a little bit of the whole military thing. And for those of you that have been in the military, thank you for your service, but man, one of the things I kind of picked up was the military's kind of hurry up and wait, isn't it? A lot of patience. And a lot of times patience, and you don't know why. Maybe most of the time, you don't know why I'm waiting, but I'm waiting. Our expectations are, come on, let's get on with this. Applications for ourselves. Let's talk about perseverance. Perseverance is a form of quiet steadfastness, diligence, as in to work with patience. Just stick to it. Just keep pressing on. Steadfast. Being steadfast despite opposition or difficulty or adversity. Waiting. The ability to wait without complaint. Ooh, that might hit close to home for some of us. What you need or what you want, whether it's an event to happen, a person to finish something, a slow process to complete. And develop calmness, a calm demeanor that endures difficulties. So now we can apply we can apply all of these things that we've talked about this morning, and we're all going to be perfectly patient, right? Well, I guess we got to be patient with ourselves and maybe understand that we may not be totally patient with everything, but we need to work on it. It is a challenge I think it's a challenge for most of us, because there are times in all of our lives when we are impatient with something. Sometimes we should be impatient. We should have that sense of urgency. But we don't want to let it become a problem, complaining. Children of Israel, were they ever impatient? Where's our food? Where's our water? Lack of trust that God would provide. But if we continue to believe that God knows what's best, I trust Him even when things look like I shouldn't trust Him, but I need to trust Him. That can be really a big challenge, but it's what we have to try to do. I appreciate everybody's comments this morning. Anything else before we wrap up? Okay, thank you. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the email that went out yesterday that has the topics, the weekly topics for the rest of this quarter, so you kind of know what's coming up. Okay? Thank you.